Good afternoon, everyone. It's 2:45. Welcome to the Leading Remote Teams session. This session is sponsored by Brooks Network Services. So we just want to give a kudos to Brooks for supporting us and supporting this session. They're a platinum sponsor. Just a little bit of information on Brooks. They are an IT solutions provider and network integrator. They have partnered with leading OEMs and IT industry leaders to digitally transform customers' organizations and ensure they're getting the very most from their technology investments. The Brooks Network Team Services team will design, build, and deliver solutions and services for customers in a wide variety of industries. The Brooks Network Services team enables their staff to transform the latest tech into customer solutions. They help their customers become more competitive in the marketplace, deliver an enhanced end-user experience, enjoy greater profitability, throughput, and stability. Give Brooks Network Services a call to create a sustainable partnership today. Thank you again, Brooks Network Services. We really appreciate it. Our presenter for this session is Glenn Hasteadt, who serves as the ITS Director for Onslow County. Welcome, Glenn, and take it away.
Thanks, Ann. It's great to see you again. These are difficult times, and we wanted to address this because this topic has been something that a lot of organizations have had to dive into really at the last minute and with little or no preparation. And from my focus on this is how do we maintain trust? How do we ease the stress and tensions, maintain collaboration and team relationships while we're all working geographically disparate? It's a lot easier to do this when you're in an office environment and you have your coworkers nearby, and you're able to drive the culture, and you're able to drive what the organization is doing and how the collaboration, and you can really get a feel for what their stresses and tensions are by being able to see their body language and whatnot. But, it's a lot harder when you're remote. Some of the challenges of leading a remote team are maintaining production, driving innovation, maintaining or improving the culture, doing, there's collaboration challenges. There's the sending and receipt of communication. What are the expectations of them? Lack of access to information and resources. You don't have all the stuff that you have at your desk. And of course, again, maintaining that emotional connection. So for us, when we went remote, luckily we had already kind of positioned our infrastructure to really be positioned for this. We have been pushing Teams for the past year. And so the technological change was a lot easier and allowed us to really focus on the softer side of this. So let's dive in. And again, these are going to be our objectives. Is when we were going to a remote team, obviously we wanted to make sure that productivity was maintained. To me, I'm actually going from least to greatest importance. So obviously we want to make sure productivity is in moving forward. And then as much as possible, I wanted to contribute to the emotional and mental health of the individual team members. This was a very difficult time, and I wanted to make sure that we were addressing that. And obviously we want to maintain the relationships and the culture and everything that we worked so hard for over the last 4.5 years. So let's start with productivity, right? So we had to not only, we wanted to make sure that this wasn't a several-week-long vacation for people. We wanted to make sure that we were meeting the needs of the business. We wanted to make sure that we were moving the organization forward still. And so we came up with a couple of ideas to keep this going. We had workers complete a log of their activities if they were remote. If they were in the office, and we had a couple people that were in the office at any given time, if they were in the office, we didn't require that because honestly, they were running around like a headless chicken. So that was really not not a need for that. But when they were remote, we did require that, and we used a shared notebook that was on our SharePoint site for our team. That shared notebook obviously is accessible to everyone. So there's some pure accountability that could still happen. I could see what Ted was doing. He could see what I was doing. And so you wanted to make sure that you were, you were making sure that you were holding up your end of the deal. We already were using Microsoft Planner in 365, and we kept our Scrum and our stand-up just became virtual. So that really moved in pretty nicely and allowed us to keep that productivity moving forward, and we were able to stay on our projects. They didn't go as well because it was harder to get in touch with some vendors, some people, because they were remote and maybe their phone was forwarded, maybe it wasn't, but we were able to start moving things forward. And obviously we had our metrics, right? We had metrics from our ticket system to maintain the trouble tickets. Obviously we had the information in Planner to see where the projects were going. And then I like to keep a pretty close relationship with all the department heads. So I got a lot of informal feedback from them. So they would tell me, oh, IT's been killing it. They got us this, they got us that. And it was really great to really understand the impact that we're having in the organization. Yeah, obviously when we do a ticket too, every time we do a ticket, it gets a survey out. So we got some of the survey responses back, and that really kept me in the loop as far as how the end users were feeling. And then we were also able to load soft phones on our PCs. So it looked just like our Cisco phone on our screen. And that allowed us to really answer the phone and work in the ticket system. And then you would just need one Bluetooth headset, and you could use it for the phone, for a Teams meeting, for whatever that happened on the machine. Now, part of this is we also wanted to make sure we acknowledge the challenges and the distractions of working from home. But you really communicated the expectation of production. So we had to reiterate this through occasional course corrections, things like, hey, I noticed your log is a little lacking. Can you be a little more specific? Can you flush that out a little bit? Or I haven't seen as many tickets being closed. Can you take a look at your tickets and make sure that we're getting those tickets closed? So it did require a little bit more touch from a management standpoint than perhaps we normally would have had. So that obviously was a little bit more of a challenge. When we start talking about the individual health of our employees, this actually was really interesting. This was a strong concern of mine due to the nature of the crisis. There's a constant bombardment of fear from mass media, from social media, and just the uniqueness of the crisis. This wasn't a hurricane, something that our folks were really kind of accustomed to dealing with. This was something a little different. And everyone reacted differently, and in some cases, very different from what I would have expected them to. Health-related issues seem to affect people in ways that I wouldn't be aware of because they don't bring that aspect of their personality to work. That's more personal stuff that they keep in their personal world. So things that I may not have been aware of. Maybe they had a family member that died due to a disease or a health issue that makes them a little bit more nervous about this. Maybe they have somebody at home that is an elderly person or somebody that's in a high risk that's making them more aware of this. And then other people that, they felt like they were in great health and maybe they reacted a little bit more dramatically to other things in the office. To this, it was kind of almost blasé. And so it was kind of interesting to me how much different all of this seemed to work out with everyone. So it was very interesting. So now I also tried to make sure that because of this, and you want to maintain that emotional health, you you don't really have as much information to gather, right? When somebody's in the office, I can look at them and I can kind of gauge their mood by looking at them. You see whether they're happy, whether they're blue, how they're interacting with their colleagues, and you can kind of get a gist of how they're doing. On this kind of format, when you're looking at me, it's very difficult for you to tell whether I'm happy, whether I'm sad. You don't get as many body language cues. You don't get as many mood cues that you normally would in person. So it was really, really difficult to do that. And so I tried to make sure that I was extra accessible, right? I wanted to make sure that they knew that I was there and that I was there for them. And that if they needed something, I could, be there. If they just needed to talk, I could be there for them if they felt, and I tried to make them feel comfortable doing so. And it was difficult because there were only so many hours in the day, but, I was able to try to maintain accessibility through things like Slack, tools like Teams, which for those of you that don't use Teams, it's kind of like Slack. But that, it was still really difficult. So what I had to do is really, at the slightest hint of an issue, and frankly, just randomly, I would reach out to people individually and kind of send them a direct message and say, hey, how's everything going? How's everything at home? How's everything going with work? Are you having any difficulties? Do you need any stuff? Is there anything I can do for you? And really just make myself available to them on a more personal level. And I had to be careful doing this because you don't want to target somebody and you don't want to, call somebody out or have them feel like they were prying. So I had to be really careful about that. But I thought about things like, well, do I do office hours and let people know that I'm available between this hour and this hour? We thought about that. I thought about, perhaps just starting up like a virtual conference room and going in there and just working with my video on, and just have other people, hey, just come on alongside me and work. I've heard of these things. I saw them on LinkedIn. I didn't really get much of an opportunity to do them because it was so crazy. But I did try to individually text people and just see how they were going. Another thing that I really tried to do, and this was kind of stupid, but it worked. Humor is an important tool, right? And a lot of workers were struggling with loneliness, anxiety, frustration, and I wanted to try to maintain that banter, that stuff that normally occurs in the office, the back and forth online. And it was difficult. And it started out and everybody was very quiet. They just went to work and then you wouldn't hear anything throughout the day unless somebody really had something they couldn't figure out, and then they would, post it. So if it got too quiet, or quiet for too long, I throw a dad joke out there, and they were horrible. I mean, I'll be the first to admit they were not good jokes. They were really not good jokes. But it didn't matter because even the ability to send that face palm emoji or just the virtual groan was still an outlet, right? It still allowed them to let that emotional stress, that anxiety out. And if they were funny, then they would laugh. And that was an even better release. And so that humor, we really tried to maintain that. And that seemed to really, really help people that started kind of slipping into anxiety, kind of pull themselves out. And as we started getting to the end of this, everybody was the same people that they were 4 months ago before any of this started for us. So that seemed to really, really work to have that humor. I see a question in there, and it's what we're using for help desk ticketing. We use Samanage. And it seems to work really well. And that's a cloud-based solution. We're very, very happy with it. And so the other thing that we wanted to do was to try to, maintain and build the connections that employees have with one another. So it became instantly apparent, as I mentioned before, that staff could inadvertently almost self-isolate. If they didn't initiate or engage on teams, they could essentially just pull out. They could just, disconnect themselves from the team, and that really would set our culture back. And we want to make sure that we're at least maintaining our culture, if not advancing it. We're always trying to advance the culture, but we want to make sure we're at least maintaining it. And so what I did is I reached out to staff members individually, and I encouraged them to find things that they could share with their teammates. And so they had to, I asked them to do training sessions. And it wasn't much. I just asked them to put together an hour training. And we did one of them a day. We didn't even, some days we even skipped, but we tried to do about one of them a day. And that was great. That shared learning was phenomenal. It did a couple of things. First of all, for the person giving that training, right? That helped to boost their self-image. It helped to boost their morale a little bit, because they're now the subject matter expert. And so that really helped. So that really helped a lot. But also it allowed them to do that cross-training that we just frankly never had time for in the office because everything's so crazy. So we were able to do some more cross-training and have people add some more tools into their toolbox. And that really worked very well also. Plus, it gave them another opportunity to kind of bond. If one of the members was doing a class, I remember Ted did a class on PowerShell. That was phenomenal. It was a great PowerShell session. And it really not only allowed the staff to learn some of that, some of them might not have realized the level of knowledge that he had. But it really, it allowed them to kind of back and forth in the chat. Wait, maybe we could use that for this and do a little brainstorming, which is what we do on the daily in person here. And so when somebody has a problem, we're very collaborative with that, and we try to make sure that we're maintaining that. And when we went virtual, it was very difficult. So somebody asked here, did our entire department move? Yeah, mostly. I mean, it was either Ted or I were in the office, and almost everybody else was gone. On the GIS department, I have 3 departments. I have IT, I have GIS, and now I have communications, which is the PIO and that kind of. So we had the 3 departments. The communications department was here because we were communicating very strongly throughout the organization. But the GIS department only had 2 or 3 folks. IT department, we have 1 of us here. The rest of us were all remote. And so it was really, it was great that we were able to maintain that bond and that collaboration, because it's just so important. We even talked about this. We never actually got to it, but we talked about doing a class together, like all of us attending the same class, whether it be SCCM or whatever, and all of us attending that same class, and then discussing it afterwards like a book club, just something. I know Simon Sinek had done that on LinkedIn. I believe it was Simon on LinkedIn, where you did a book club and everybody just go online and talk about whatever, they just read in the book. Just strangers on LinkedIn. And it is so important. The GIF and the memes, we already have that. We couldn't turn that off. These people are crazy. They kill me. The one thing we did do is we turned off the not safe for work ones, at least as best we could with that little checkbox in 365. Apparently there's still some out there, so be careful with that. But yeah, we already had that on, and we're a little GIF happy sometimes. I did give my choice of staff on coming a choice kind of. When we were in the high restrictions, it was kind of like, no, you're out of here. I got one pregnant lady. I was definitely like, you're definitely out of here. Not to key on her, but I mean, we were all worried about her. And of course, we're kind of very family oriented here. So we were very, very concerned about that. But we've been back since the 11th now. And honestly, you can't get the smile off my face. I'm the happiest man in the world because I've missed these people so much. They're so amazing, and not being able to really be around them was almost I had to fight my own anxiety and depression with it. One other thing that we did is we moved our department meeting to weekly as opposed to monthly. We would normally have a monthly department meeting. I'll start those with kudos. Generally, every meeting I start with information that I'm getting back from the organization saying what a great job everyone does. And that's how I start my meeting, is I call people out for doing a great job. In the 4.5 years that I've been here, I've never been able to start a meeting without kudos. That's how effective they are and how effective they're being. But we started having that weekly. And we did that so that folks could see one another and interact, or at least hear one another. And that was really important to me, that they be able to hear someone's voice. If you text me that you're okay, that's fine. But when I hear your voice saying, no, really, Glenn, I'm fine, that means a lot more to me. So I wanted to make sure we heard them, that they spent a little bit of time speaking, at least. I only required them to put their camera on at one meeting, and I gave them plenty of heads up so that everyone would have their hair did. But I did require them to put their camera on in one meeting, because we had been remote for 3 or 4 weeks, and frankly, I just missed seeing them. And so I asked them, I said, just I don't care if it's on for a second. I just want to see you. I want to know that you're okay. I want to see you and know that you're okay. And I just miss seeing you. And so, that was the only time I really allowed them to do that, or made them put their camera on. I shouldn't say allowed. They were allowed to put it on whenever they wanted. Another way that we helped keep the culture was we tried to maintain the rituals that we have in the office. And so starting the day with a good morning and ending with have a great night really became something that everyone grabbed. Like, there was a lot of peer pressure if you didn't say good morning and everyone else did. There's a lot of peer pressure if you didn't have some goofy gift to say see you later. There was a lot of peer pressure around that, which was great because it kept people engaged. They weren't able to virtually disconnect. Obviously, we maintained our scrum or our stand-up for the project meeting, which was great. We actually had some other people that we normally do it in person here. So we have some staff that works over at our CHS building, and they generally don't make it here for the Monday scrum. We have it at 8:30 in the morning, and they're already swamped by then. But for this, they were able to attend. So it was wonderful. We actually had more people here. And then I also tried to encourage some problem solving by asking for ideas. If I had something that was brought to me, or if I knew that there was a problem brought to somebody else, I'd throw it out there. I knew I probably had a good solution for it, or Ted certainly did. But I threw it out there, and hey, I'm looking for help on this. What do you guys think we should do with this? And that gave them those cues that they needed to really stay engaged. I'm going to put a link, if I can get my mouse over there. I'm going to put this link, if I can. Copy link, and let me get over to this text here and send it to all panelists and attendees. All right, so I've got this link that I just posted, and I'll answer those questions in a second. Or if you can move those questions, those of you that have questions, if you can put them in the Q&A, that would make it a lot easier. But if that journal right there, the one thing that I wanted to make sure that I was mindful of is that the research tends to show that employees tend to follow their manager's reaction to stress and crisis, right? I wanted to acknowledge the stress because I'm not a robot, but I wanted to express confidence that not only will the team prevail, but the organization will. And not only will the team prevail, but actually will, succeed. Will exceed expectations, which we did. And all I heard from department heads was, "Oh, thank goodness IT was here. Thank goodness IT was here." And it was just wonderful to hear it time and time again, because there were areas like DSS that was going remote, and that would never be on their radar. So it was wonderful that we were able to get that feedback. And I did, if I heard in the beginning, and this was more in the beginning before we really got into this, if I heard an employee discussing things in a way that promoted anxiety, I'd pull them aside. Hey, I'm not just responsible for the work. We're responsible for these. I'm responsible for these people. And I'm responsible for them and their mental health. So help me out by not promoting fear. I don't want to minimize the extent of the crisis, but I certainly don't want to fuel the flames. And so, don't repeat the worst case. That just increases anxiety. Let's just discuss, and we'll plan for it, and we'll succeed, and we'll get from A to B. And focusing on the negative is fine, as long as it's focusing on it just long enough to devise a plan. But we want to keep our vision on what we can do, and not on what we can't control. And these things that we implemented, yes, some of them we keep. Some of the business processes we've changed. Some of the business processes we've changed, and we've kind of made sure that we're a little bit more efficient than we were. I gave my staff the ability to change their hours based on what was going on in the house with kids? No, not really. No, we really didn't. But if they had to run to change a diaper, they ran to change a diaper. If they had a kid climbing over their shoulder while we were having a meeting, that was fantastic. Let me see your kids. It actually, we tried to actually move everything forward. Our management's a relationship, and you let me into your lives. I mean, they were letting me into their homes every time we had a virtual meeting, and I wasn't going to waste that. I didn't want to lose that. I want to see your kids. We interviewed somebody. The dog kept making noise. Let me see your dog. I mean, yeah, okay, well, that's a cool looking dog, man. It sounds like a lot of fun. I mean, that's important. That's our lives. I tell them all the time, family comes first, right? Your family is always going to be there. There's really not so much that this job has that's going to be more important than your family, because your family is they're with you forever, and so we did want to make sure that they knew that, and that's really important to me. Did I see an increase or decrease? We saw a decrease in the amount of tickets that we saw overall. I will say this though, you know how ticketing is. It's kind of cyclical. It's either busy or it's slow. Well, this crisis seemed to exacerbate that a little bit, where when it was busy, it was insane, and when it was slow, it was dead. So that was really, part of it. Yeah, you're right, Tom. Everybody does seem to save their tickets for Mondays. I don't know why they do that, but you're right. It's exactly what happens. But one other thing that we tried to do, and frankly, this came from our county manager, and this is something that we tried to do as well. But we have a new county manager as of October-ish, sometime around the fall. But one of her things is, frankly, she's the best boss I've ever had. So I'm just blessed to work with her. But one of her things is really increased communication. So she tried to share information constantly. She sends weekly emails to the entire county, letting them know what was going on. With COVID, she ramped that up even more. And I tried to share all of that. Anything that came my way, I shared as quickly as I could. And I did that because I didn't want people to feel like they were disconnected from what was going on. You don't have your stuff, you don't have the resources that you do at your desk. Well, heck, you should at least know what's going on. So that information was very important that we push things through. Did we create any special resources and documentation for people that may have been working remotely for the first time? Actually, no, but yes. I don't know really how to answer this. I'll probably double down on this. Since I came here, we've been trying to do, when I walked in the door, we have 1,300 employees, right? And this is a unique organization, right? But we had 1,300 employees. When I walked in the door, there were literally 5 IT people, not including me, which was unsustainable. It's insane. But what we were able to do is the DSS had 2 frontline support, and but they were being supported by people that weren't technical, so they weren't able to grow. So they moved those positions into our group. I was able to add a couple of other positions, and so now we're up to 10 positions with 1 more in the budget. So that 11 positions will probably be more, that will be fine with that, unless we take on additional support roles that we don't already have. Honestly, if it's electric and it plugs in the wall, we do it. But, having those, when we had those 5 people, there wasn't a lot of cross training. And so what we did is I tried to increase the documentation. Luckily, I have Matt Dolage on my team, and he is a master documenter. So every time, if he knew something, he could write it as if it was a first-time person. If he learned something, he could write every detail about it. And so he was able to create a significant amount of documentation, and we just extended that working remotely. And Helen, collaboration seems to have decreased the number of tickets with instant access to people in Teams. Absolutely. We've been pushing Teams for over a year because we wanted to increase collaboration, and I use it as a tool to increase our culture. If I'm remote or wherever else, they're constantly connected on Teams. There's constantly something going on Teams, and that culture is constantly being built, and those relationships are being reinforced. So Teams to me is a huge tool for that. But I guess the whole point of everything, that we were talking to is, you can't just be responsible for what you're doing, right? You have to care about the people. You have to care about who they are and what they're doing. Maintaining the vision of your culture is actually more important during the crisis. It's easy to get distracted by the crisis and the extra requests or the different requests, but it's actually more important during the crisis because it gives you opportunities to walk the talk, right? It gave me opportunities when people had like this question here, work-life balance and things like that. if they had questions, if they had something going on in their home. We were talking before about kids. You know, it gave me more opportunity to show that I cared, which deepened that relationship, because I could say I care, and that, you know, means so much, right? But if I show you I care, if I support you, if you see that support, if I'm giving you extra training, if I'm making ways for you to further yourself, right? That gave me the opportunities that I needed to do that, which made our relationship deeper, which pushed our culture forward. Now, do we have people that have trouble with the work-life balance? And oh gosh, I tell you, so I worked at home. I have a porch. My house. I have a house on the water out here at the beach. Right, it's beautiful. I love it. And I would sit on my porch, big screened-in porch, and I'd have my work cigar. And for the first 2 days, it was great because I was able to get to all the stuff that I can't get to in a regular day. I was able to get some documentation done and, you know, all this other stuff. And after those first 2 days, after I'd gotten most of that done, honestly, I hated it. And I hated it for that very reason, because 5 o'clock came, right? And because I was home, I didn't have the commute. I have a half an hour commute. I didn't have that commute as a delineator between work and home. And so that was very difficult. You know, yes. Oh, Shannon. Yeah. Using Teams to find it and check in on them. Absolutely. You know, and that's what I was talking about, kind of sliding into people, direct messages, just to kind of talk to them, and maintain a connection with them. But yeah, so it was difficult to separate work and life because of that. Like I would actually look at my porch where I would work from, and I would start thinking about work, even though it was a Saturday. And so that's the one thing I really didn't like, and I don't know that I have a great answer for how to do that. Some of my team, I talked to them about this. Some of my team, Tiffany, for instance, said, you know, after a couple of weeks, she was able to figure it out. And maybe I didn't stay home long enough to really figure it out, because Ted and I would switch 1 week on, 1 week off. So on Wednesday, he or I would come in and work till the following Tuesday in the office while the other one was home. And we did that like on purpose on Wednesdays so that we had the weekend, so we weren't in the office 5 days in a row, getting pounded by all the, you know, the requests that everybody had, because even the IT people, sometimes you got to lay hands on it. So you were their hands. So, you know, that was kind of challenging. Let me go back up to this chat window. Golly, there's a lot of chat in there. Yeah, so some people never left. Wow. No, we're all in the office. We're not going to work remotely. We're all in the office. We'll probably keep the remote work in our hip pocket for right now. We are in hurricane country, so I'm sure we'll use it again. It was never allowed here before, so culture. It was kind of a huge paradigm shift, really here, more on a personal, cultural level than technical. I mean, obviously technical we figured out. Tabitha's on a hybrid schedule. Yep. And that question was asked in the thing. Have staff telework on a combination of personal preference. Hey, that's great. Again, I did not feel as productive as at home. I felt much more productive here. I work better in front of people, you know, talking to them. You know, that's transition with a beer. Sure, Denise, absolutely. You know, it took some time to get adjusted. What I found was scheduling time to walk. Oh, sure. Yeah, so that's great if you can take those kind of breaks. You know, IT is very difficult because you don't really know what you're doing when you're doing it. But I felt like I was much more productive in the office with all of my stuff, Tabitha. Yes, definitely. Has assist your team with setting up a routine, how to set up a work area. Yeah, it's difficult, but you definitely want to be there for them, because that's, you know, a big part of our job is being there for those employees on an emotional level. Yes, and definitely, Shannon, I could definitely see you being more productive at home, because you know, you're able to just bear down and focus without as many interruptions. We found, you know, as more people use Teams, we actually have more interruptions. They just be virtual. I don't ask my staff to work remotely. You know, we told them flat out, you know, on the 18th, the county manager wants us back in the office, and telework is suspended, and they were cool with it. They're all here, and frankly, because we were able to deepen some of those relationships, I feel like they're happier back. I mean, they finally got to see everybody, and you make those jokes and hear the laughter and everything. They were, you know, a lot of them were happy to get out of the house, frankly. So, you know, it's kind of great, you know, them being able to now interact in person. Virtual interaction's great. It's fantastic. But like I said before, I miss these people so much. And when IT came back on the 11th, we came back the week before the county did, so that we could be prepped for helping everybody. You couldn't have taken a smile off my face with a crowbar. You really couldn't have. It was just so wonderful, just to be around them again. You know, they're just great people. Do we have any other questions? I had to put the virtual cigar and bourbon up there. I know that a lot of people are used to seeing me with a cigar. Yeah, I am a hugger. Thank you, Shannon. Not so much at work. I try to keep that at a minimum at work, but yeah, no, it's like I said, we're just seeing them makes me smile. So I didn't have to get too many high fives. So if everyone will, happy birthday to Shannon, one of my favorite people, and definitely one of the people that has helped me advance my career, advance my knowledge, and definitely one of the people that I hold in very high regard, and as a big part of my success is due to what I learned from Shannon's class, from the MCA program, from Pella. You know, these are very important programs that really help me move myself forward, and be able to do things. Do I accommodate my office with office furniture? No, I didn't send office furniture home with them. We did send laptops home with GIS staff. They have desktops because of what they do, and we sent them home with laptops so that they could remote desktop the more powerful computers here and work. We have any other questions? Shannon getting a lot of birthday love, which is awesome. Well, you know, if there's no other questions, oh, thank you, Amy. If there's no other questions, I'm going to hand this back to you, Ann.
All right, thank you, Glenn. That was a great presentation, and love the interaction with the chat and Q&As. You did a great job in navigating between those. So good job, and great content. Definitely something that we can all relate to. Next up on our agenda is another virtual exhibit hall, which goes up until the next group of sessions that begins at 4:15. So again, just a reminder, please take the time to visit and network with our vendors. We all know they're very supportive of Nicogiza, and you know, they help make this conference possible. And we'll see you all at one of the next sessions. Thank you, everyone.